Good morning. Thank you for joining us for the AQS Quilt Chat this morning.
Welcome back.
Did you have a good holiday?
Oh, yes.
It's always
Wonderful.
good to have a day off in the middle of the week, and I took a couple extra days in there.
You did some traveling, didn't you?
I did. I went to Bernina University and had a great time there. Got to see all the newest things in the Bernina sewing machines.
That's exciting.
It was. But I know we've got lots of fun stuff planned for today, and we're glad to have you join us this morning.
Very much so. So we've been super busy. While everybody's been taking a little holiday, we were really busy. And so we've been getting ready for Christmas in July. Right?
That's
'Cause
the
this is
time.
of
No,
year.
you're the one with all the plan ahead stuff. I would expect nothing less.
If I do all those planners, I should be doing some planning. And so we're halfway through the year, which means we're halfway to Christmas. And so this is the time of year all the little quilters get excited and get busy. And I think it's just so that you can turn your air conditioner down and make it even colder inside and pretend it's Christmas time.
Right.
Because that's what I need so much. And so on the blog this week, we have kind of a shout out to our Christmas countdown quilters. So each year we do a Christmas countdown where there's blocks. We've been doing it for 3 years, so we have 75 blocks.
They're amazing.
Little 4-inch blocks that are available over at aqsblog.com. And all you have to do is go over there and hit the search for Christmas Countdown, and they will all come flooding up to you. And so in case you started that project and have these little 4-inch blocks, but you decided 4-inch blocks aren't your best friends, and so you need something to do with them, we have some Christmas table toppers. We put up 2 this week for you to go ahead and just finish out and use those blocks. Now,
They'd make great Christmas gifts then too,
They
wouldn't
would.
they?
they
Sure.
really would.
Yes.
Gifts or decorations, it'll be wonderful. You can also, if you don't have any 4-inch blocks, we encourage you to try. Just try some. They're so fun. And so, like I said, there's 75 to pick from, so you should find at least a couple you like. And be sure to join our Facebook group. We have a Christmas countdown group, and they get a little quiet in the summertime, which is understandable. But when they get going at Christmas time, things get hopping. So we'd love to see you there as well.
I'm sure they're thinking about it anyway.
Oh yes,
They-
very much so.
Maybe not actively making their blocks at this moment, but
No, but yeah, definitely working on getting it started again. Yes, and then we also have this really great video that Cindy Seitz-Krug made on grid-based quilting. And grid-based quilting is one of those things that is really fantastic for everyone who wants to try finishing their own project. Because grid-based quilting lets you adjust your scale really easily by drawing the grid on there, and it gives you guidelines so you can quilt really beautiful, elaborate designs with just the simplest.
So
of
you have
techniques.
points to hit so that you're not having to just wing it.
That's right.
Yes, that's a really good way to get started in machine quilting.
It is. And in this video, she not only shows you how to place the grid and create your design, but also gives some great tips on when you're actually quilting that, where your eye needs to lead you, which is really important with quilting.
And those kinds of designs make really good quilting patterns for backgrounds.
Oh, they do.
And so, you can scale them down to a half an inch or an inch, or you can make them larger
Yes,
depending on
right.
how big a space that you're going to fill.
find something that you're comfortable stitching and take off.
Yes.
And then Cindy has a book that has even more information
She
about
does.
that.
Her Guide to Grids is a great workbook that takes you through several different grid patterns. And so both of those are really great. You can find that over at aqsblog.com.
You know, speaking of Christmas and Cindy, she has a Christmas stocking iQuilt class.
She sure does.
And we're doing a little spin-off of that in the November AQ, so stay
how
tuned.
cool.
Okay.
I always love it when you throw teasers out there because then
Yeah.
I just want to see.
Not telling yet.
And you know what? We all want to learn how to quilt like Cindy Seitz-Krug does, don't we?
Yes.
Yes.
And she's a great patient teacher. I love her. Her little speed that she takes things is just my speed. So I love that. Over on the blog, we also have an article this week about supersizing any quilt block. So you can take a block from itty bitty if you want to take one of those 4-inch blocks and turn it into a whole quilt, an 80-inch quilt, you sure could. And so it just takes you just real simple, step by step through the little process to blow up any block. And that's because this month for Quilt 2018, our project this month is one design quilts. So quilts that just
Right.
have a single design, not a repetition of blocks.
Right.
And so if you want to take a block and blow it up into a giant quilt, stop by the blog and learn how.
And all they really need for that is a pencil and some graph paper, don't they?
Yes.
To make their initial block and then figure out how big it has to be to make it larger.
Yes, and that's
right?
just what I did. I took the pencil to the graph paper and took pictures of it so they could just see exactly what I do in the brain process of getting from itty bitty to gigantic. That's all.
That's
and
great.
of course, we still have going on our 50 states and 50 mug rugs. And we are just past halfway through. And we have some beautiful blocks for you for this week, if we could show those. And there they are. You can see Florida. A Shamu, by the way. And then we have Iowa. And
Iowa.
Bonnie Hill's from Iowa. And
Yes.
that's corn. That's
Corn.
not a banana.
And you know what? Driving through Illinois, and I was in Iowa last weekend, the corn is looking really, really good.
So beautiful.
Get tall.
Yes.
And then there is Michigan. And there's there's lots of gorgeous wildlife stuff in Michigan, and I don't draw wildlife real well. So you've got a waterfall and some beautiful things. Texas, that is a Cadillac. There is Cadillac Ranch where Cadillacs are buried in the ground.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Dying to go there. Dying to go there. And Wisconsin, with lots of really beautiful art things they do in Wisconsin.
And if you're from Wisconsin, I bet you'd put a block of cheese on that quilt
I can't draw
somewhere.
cheese. I
Probably.
can't draw cheese. So
can't draw
I
cheese.
don't have cheese. Yeah, so if you wonder why something's not on a block, I usually can't figure out how to draw it. Or I've left it for you to add it to your block. Because everybody should put their own things on there, like grandma's house
Oh, yeah.
and your favorite sewing hole and all those things. I don't know everything about all the states.
See, in Iowa, I would think about the house where they did the Grant Wood painting.
Oh, yes.
In front of that old house, which still is a tourist attraction there in Iowa.
It's beautiful.
That's probably something as an artist that I would put there.
Yes. See, so everybody should do their own thing. And hi, Peggy from Florida. And we have Lori loves the Texas block. And Reese says hello. Hi, Reese. It's so good to see you all this morning. And so please stop by aqsblog.com. And when you go there, sign up for the newsletter for On Point so that each Wednesday you can find out what exciting things are happening, because we have some really exciting things happening you'll hear about in just a minute.
Well,
Okay.
but first of all, we want to talk about the quilt that's behind us. We're going to be kind of scrappy today. So this is a great example of reproduction of scrappy quilt from the, 30s?
30s,
Probably
20s,
30s
yes.
fabrics.
Yes.
It is done by Cheryl Snellgrove. The name of the quilt is Dot to Dot. She's from Otagoville, Alabama, and the original pattern is by Nancy Mahoney.
And I have to tell you, I love two things about this quilt. Using the rickrack like she did in that outer border ties in with the whole theme of this 30s style quilt.
It's so cute.
But I like borders and all those little finishing touches, so I like that red and white stripe that she used for the piping
Right.
inside that border. And
cute.
so just those extra little techniques that just take it up a notch.
The stripe is very interestingly used. You'll see it there underneath the rickrack because it looks quite a bit like a pieced red and white.
I was afraid that's
Border.
what it was.
I tested it. There's no seam there.
Tell me that's not pieced.
Yeah, that's exactly what she said when I did it too.
And rickrack. I saw a lot of rickrack when I was younger. I remember
Yes.
that was a
missed
sewing staple
Yes,
pretty
that's
much
right. We all
for our
used
mothers
it.
too.
It is. Well, so taking scraps a step further, we decided that we would do a scrap quilt along with you, and we're going to divide it into 3 different sessions. So we're going to start it today, and then for the next 2 weeks, we will do something on this quilt. And to make this quilt, you need 144 light fabrics, 144 medium fabrics, and 144 dark fabrics. And that'll make a quilt that is 6 blocks by 8 blocks. And so I know that sometimes we all have a lot of medium fabrics because most of the fabrics that the manufacturers make in their lines of fabrics are medium, and then they have a little bit of light and a little bit of dark. So sometimes that leaves us with a hole. And so if you don't have enough light fabrics, for instance, go buy yourself 1 piece of light fabric that you cut your 4-inch squares out of that for all of the lights. And what it'll do is it'll make it look like a coordinated scrap quilt.
Oh,
It'll
I
look
see.
like you did a
Sure.
whole lot more work than you did.
It will.
You could do the same thing with the dark fabric. If you don't have very many dark fabrics, just use a single fabric for that. But I'm going to show you how we sort our fabric. And these are, this stack here is about 1/3 of what you need to cut. So
That's a
you can see this
lot.
is, I think it's about 160 pieces here. And so we're going to do just a little sorting to show you. And first of all, we're going to sort in 2 piles, a light pile and a dark pile. And here, Ann, I'll let you help me with this one.
Sure.
And so you're going to see, and so if you pick it up, and I put this in the dark pile, and that purple's probably going to be in the dark pile. And then here's our light pile. So if it isn't light, then it must be dark, right?
Well, and we're not doing mediums
Not
yet.
yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Is this a light or a dark? Would you go, since it
Well,
has some color?
And I probably would put it in the light pile for now because our
Much
darks
lighter than
are,
that, for
are
sure.
really dark. Yes. And some of you will recognize some of these fabrics from leftovers of that group of quilts that we made for the UNESCO meeting a few months ago.
Ah, yeah.
And so
They're
that's where some of these came from.
I think if someone had a bunch of charm squares, those bundles of charm squares that they have laying around that they haven't used in anything, they
That's a
could
great idea.
bundle a
yes,
bunch of those together.
And when I've taught this in a guild setting, I've even had people who used 2.5-inch squares. Sometimes they collect those as little charm
Right.
squares, or 5-inch squares, which is a cut that the manufacturers
That's the
do.
typical charm square size, I think.
The only thing you have to make sure you do is have all your squares the same size.
Mm-hmm.
So this will work for any of those. All right, so we probably have done a.
You did.
She wasn't talking, was she? All right, so let's take our light pile now, and we're going to resort these again.
I don't think I put enough in the light pile.
And so you can see that we're going to have light, and now this is going to be the dark of that pile.
Okay.
And that'll be the dark of that pile. And this one's pretty light. We're going to put it over there. And so now what we've done is we've made a light pile and a medium pile. Now if we take and resort this
That over there to
group,
get it out of the way.
we're gonna do again. And so you can see how these end up in the lights and mediums.
I think I'm done. Did I win, Bonnie?
You did win. And now I can tell you, this
Wow.
kind of a fabric is what I call a problem child.
I was going to ask you because you put it there and I was headed the same fabric over there.
Well, and when we get ready to sew these, I'll explain more of why this can be a problem child because it really depends on what you put with it. If you put one of those,
That would read dark.
it would read dark. But if you put it with this, it really doesn't quite read dark, does it?
Right.
So, all right, so now that we've done that, I think I'm going to
threw all
put that
mine
in the dark pile.
I did too.
And I actually think that purple's going to end up over there too. And so now your work for next week is to cut your fabric in 4-inch squares or another size that you might choose. And you're going to take each of these lights and mediums and draw a diagonal line on the back of each one. And so that's
Just on the medium.
and the lights.
Oh, and the lights.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we're always going to be sewing mediums to dark and light to dark. And so you don't have to mark the dark ones, that's hard to see anyway. And so all you do is mark these 2 piles, lights, and so you should have 144 of each of those.
Okay.
You can see I don't have mine all cut, but I will have them all cut by next time. And so next week, we will talk about sewing the blocks and give you some other tips on pressing and everything else that goes with this.
Nice.
And we do have a link to the instructions for anyone that's following along and says, oh, I need to print this out. Over at aqsblog.com, you can find the Quiltchat Quilt-Along.
Good.
And so, and that's
so-
the instructions for today.
Yes.
Yes, and so we'll add to that every week until we get this new quilt all put together.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yay, this is gonna be so
So
much fun.
yeah, so it'll be fun, and this is such an easy quilt. And you know what? I would recommend that as you're making a quilt project and you have a leftover, cut yourself a 4-inch strip, cut them into squares, throw them into a box. You might even sort them into 3 small boxes, because then you won't have to sort them again. But then when you get enough of them in there, you've got enough in there to make a quilt.
How fun.
It is. Well, we hope that you are staying cool, because it's supposed to get up into the high 90s again here in Paducah. Feels like 103, I think
And
they
you know,
said.
I didn't know this was possible, but in Kentucky they have 200% humidity.
I can believe that.
It's unbelievable.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Oh, I was going to say, somebody's asking about the dot-to-dot pattern. That is a pattern by Nancy Mahoney, and I don't know any more about it than that, but
wonderful.
you can probably look her up and find
On
Nancy
the-
Mahoney patterns.
Yes, on the website.
Thank you, Ann.
Yes. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we can't wait to see you next week, and we'll continue on with our Quilt-Along. See you then.